Welcome to the Planning Committee. Item 1 on the agenda to sign the minutes of the previous meeting. Is your wish, members, that a true and correct record? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Apologies for absence. Nobody else? Right. Okay, members' interests? No. Okay, don't forget you can always, if you find out on the interest, say so later on. Party whipping arrangements?
No.
To members of the public, that means that political parties don't get together, or any groups of people get together beforehand to judge and to decide how they're going to vote. There are some applications withdrawn tonight, and I can find my little list, which I seem to have lost for the moment, but I'll be there in a second. Right, the first application that's on the agenda is in Brixworth. That was delegated because the parish council withdrew their objection. Application 0790 in Yelvertoft has been withdrawn. Application 1099 in Brixworth, again the parish council withdrew their objection, so that's another delegated approval. The next one, which is Treble 15 in West Haddon, again has been withdrawn. And at Chairman's briefing there is another one, the next one in Brixworth, which is on page 123, that's 1123, is a delegated approval. Now, I'm going to explain to members why. If you turn to page 123, I think it's 123, yes, 124, you'll see that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there are 7 reasons that Brixworth Parish Council cite for why it should be refused, and none of them are valid planning reasons. We've been through the lot of it, and I can see a Brixworth Parish Council nodding. It looks to me this site has planning permission, outline planning permission, and then this is a full one.
It's got full planning.
It's got full planning permission for outline, yeah. It's got full planning permission, and this is just a different style of house. So it looks like Brixworth Parish Council put the original objections in for the second one as for the first one. So none of those are valid planning reasons, so if you can understand that. Right. The next part to do is to tell you a bit of housekeeping. Sorry? Yes, Councillor. Councillor over there. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'll let you finish off your housekeeping and then come in then, sir.
No, you can come in now if you want.
Right, sir. Reference 0937, which has gone through. The residents and Brixworth Parish Council would like to thank Michael Benton and Sue Barnes for the excellent work which they've done in moving this forward, because it does go back to 2014. So I'd be delighted if you just register our thanks and those of the residents.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. I'm sure officers will be very pleased to hear that. I'm sure that will be done. Right, back to the housekeeping. If the fire alarm bell rings, it's not a practice, so please go out the way you come in as quietly and orderly as possible. Please switch your mobile phones to silent, because we've got the chairman of the council there and she takes £20 or £30 off you every time it rings during the committee. So if you want to save money, switch them off. The proceedings are being recorded. Speakers will have 3 minutes, and after that you'll hear a tone which you'll be asked to wind up. It's the only opportunity for public to speak, so if you please don't interrupt, I'm sure you won't. No clapping, hissing, booing or whatever, whether you like what somebody's saying or you don't like, I'm sure you won't do that. You will see officers and people on the top here talking, while a member of the public is speaking. It looks awfully bad manners, but the reason being is we're trying to get an answer for what you're saying, so that when you finish speaking, we can give you the answer without waiting another 5 minutes. Right, that's that part. Update for members. Still 6% is the figures on appeal, and it's 84% are in time, the applications, so the figures are still good at the moment. Okay? Now we go to the first application, which is in Stonehenge Churches, 0195. Officers?
Thanks, Chairman. Refer members to the late representations and further comment from the local resident. In addition to that, if members can go to the report, there is a typographical error at page 45, which makes reference to the site lying within the special landscape area. Factually, that's incorrect. The site lies just to the north and outside of the special landscape area. And therefore, policy EM1 doesn't apply. However, members may have regard to policy GN2G, which does require to consider whether or not proposals have an adverse impact on special landscape areas. For your benefit, Chairman, the report's quite a detailed report, and I don't propose to go through it in detail. Suffice it to say that the application has been assessed against the relevant development plan policies and found to be compliant with those policies, and accordingly officers are recommending that the application be approved. It's a relatively small scale development, as you can see on the drawing, which involves one mobile home, one travelling pitch, and the retention or retrospective permission for an existing day room. Subject to the conditions listed in the report, the application is recommended for approval, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. We've got 4 speakers. Commodore Wells, who's against the application?
Mr. Chairman, Councillors, I am Commodore William Wells and I live in the parish of Stonehenge Churches. Tonight I've been elected to speak on behalf of the residents of that parish. Now I cannot begin to stress the levels of disquiet that is being expressed by all the residents of our parish in relation to this particular application. For among other things, the site in question is in fact a site of special landscape area. We understand and accept that the procedures of this application have been prepared with due diligence. But our concerns include that the proposed use of this site actually renders the site itself as unsustainable. And of course we're concerned as to whether the accompanying conditions of this application will in fact be upheld by the Council. For we all know that historically the Daventry Council has a very poor record in enforcing any conditions imposed on planning applications. Many minor planning infringements go unchallenged, because of the time spent in rectifying the infringement becomes non-cost effective to the Council, and so the matter is simply and expeditiously dealt with, usually by retrospective consent. An inch is given here, an inch is taken there, and the next thing we know is the proverbial mile has been taken, and we in Stonehenge Churches fear that this is what's going to end up and happening on this particular application and site. I do not know any of my fellow residents who has any confidence in the Daventry District Council's ability or your will to enforce these conditions. So it stands to reason, does it not? If there's no mechanism or will within the Council to ensure compliance of the conditions imposed, then there's no real purpose in putting those conditions there first. I'm going to quote now the exact words from an experienced planning enforcement officer from another district not too far from where we're sitting tonight, and I quote, "It is unsafe to grant consent for a planning application when the Council are either unable or incapable of enforcing the conditions they have applied." End of quote. It is the considered opinion of the residents of the parish of Stonehenge Churches that Daventry Council is neither able, capable, and based on your track record, probably not even willing to enforce the conditions imposed by this planning application. And that, Mr. Chairman, is why we continue our objections.
Thank you, sir. I wouldn't normally comment on some of these things, but I think some of your comments are not quite true there, sir.
Well, with respect
no, you can't come back, sir. And Mr. Dell, Stowe Parish Council.
If the committee pleases, as you can see, there is enormous concern in our local community about this application. And it is the view of the Stonenine Churches Parish Council that the applicant has displayed a total disregard for planning procedure, as is evidenced by the fact that a significant part of the application is retrospective. And during the period of the consultation, further works were carried out without the benefit of planning permission. The applicant is far from transparent in the intentions for the application, which can be evidenced by the agent's stated opinion that the pitch can be used by any gypsy or traveller who may live there for any length of time that they see fit, with ownership irrelevant in his judgment. In reality, this is simply a private commercial project for profit and causes Stonenine Churches Parish Council serious concern. It certainly does not fill us with any confidence that Condition 6 will be either observed or that it will be easily enforced. This committee will be aware of the decision of South Northants District Council not to endorse this application. If Daventry District Council grant permission for the site, they have to be clear that they have the capacity to enforce the conditions, and if that is in doubt, then permission should not be granted. If DDC grant permission for this site, they must only do so in complete confidence that it has the capacity to properly enforce the conditions it has set, and if that is in any doubt, which is what we contend to be the case, our village community expects the democratic process to be honoured and that permission should not be granted. In reality, this application requests a change of use of the site from agricultural land in open countryside. We contend that just because it's a private site and private application, it doesn't automatically make it a suitable or good site. In fact, far from it. I could ask for a Tesco's in my own private field, but common sense would suggest it's not suitable to have Tesco's right in the middle of our tiny village. Specifically, the application does not benefit from the presumption in favour of sustainable development, and the site does not meet the government's criteria and definition for sustainable development. Even with shortfall in pitches across the county, this should not override the very important consideration of sustainability. I would also respectfully remind the committee of the need to conserve heritage and landscape assets. You will know that the need for new housing and settlements does not override these important considerations. As stated, the site is currently agricultural land, and therefore this application looks for a significant change of use. There are major concerns about the environmental impact affecting the nearby Grand Union Canal, an area of significant local heritage. If the key argument from DDC is to approve the site only to satisfy criteria or pressure to establish gypsy pitches targets across the county, then surely proper suitable alternatives should first be considered thoroughly, and permission should not be given for what is clearly a poorly accessed site, which, because it is located in open countryside, would never be considered by a responsible local authority when planning in the public sector. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Miss Butler, is it, from Weed?
Yes, hello councillors. I'm representing Weedon Beck Parish Council. The application site is just on the edge of Weedon Parish. We submitted an objection to this application mainly because it seems to be trying to deliver a permanent residential facility on a site which is effectively in open countryside. We have concerns, grave concerns, that the access to and from the site is via a particularly steep slope, directly onto a main trunk road or off a main trunk road. Given that a long wheelbase transit is approximately 5.6 metres long and a typical touring caravan 5 is 7.6 metres long, 25 foot in old money, this vehicle length then becomes something like 13.5 metres. A distinct danger, I would suggest, to other road users if these were manoeuvring in and out of a site with a road such as that. According to some Daventry District Link Road documents, the A5 is approximately 7.3 metres wide, with a 1 metre strip at either side in the vicinity of Weedon Beck. So that means 2 of those would fit in one of those bits of road. Very poor. Irrespective of that poor access, less than about 30 metres away is a big road sign in the direction of Toaster and a T-junction towards Weedon. Both clearly a problem for getting in and out of that site. There's already been fatalities very close to that site, including a young lad from Weedon. and several serious accidents causing road closures, one of which was right by this junction only last year, and I saw it from my own eyes. Following the fatality of the young lad from Wigan, we Parish Council actively canvassed for a reduced speed limit on this dangerous stretch of road, given all the access points, etc. But the Highways Agency, as it was then, would not consider it necessary. We are concerned that the Highways Agency, who have the responsibility for the A5, along with County Council Highways, have not made a thorough investigation at this site and are merely proposing conditions to manage this site. I would ask you if you would feel comfortable knowing that if permission is granted and it leads to yet more serious accidents or even fatalities, that you would actually really be comfortable with that. It's not clear if this site is for one pitch, that it's an ancillary building, one mobile and one touring caravan. It sort of says that, but we wonder if it really will be that, and our local residents thinks it will be used for far more caravans than it says. So therefore, you know, any restrictions on numbers must be imposed if you choose to see this go ahead. Equally, this site really in recent years has only been used for people managing horses. So the number of vehicle movements into and out of site have been very, very limited. The gentleman from Stowe has already mentioned how close it is to the Grand Union Canal, a special area of beauty that our residents feel should be maintained. And should they wish to approve it, we would like to make sure that there's no ancillary business run from this site. We would respectfully request the committee to consider refusing this.
Thank you. Mr. Green, the agent.
Good evening. I'm Nathaniel Green from Green Planning Studio, and I'm speaking on behalf of our client, Mr. Biddle, in support of this application. This committee is here to decide the matter on planning issues only. This application is for a single gypsy pitch, recommended for approval subject to conditions. The officer's report accepts that the LPA needs to identify a 5-year land supply of specific deliverable sites, and that it is estimated by Daventry District Council there is a recognised need for an extra 20 gypsy pitches in the period until 2023 and required for 8 pitches to 2017. As only 2 such pitches have been supplied, there is therefore no 5-year land supply. According to paragraph 49 of the NPPF, there is a presumption in favour of the application, and therefore paragraph 14 comes into effect, which states that permission should be given unless there are significant and demonstrable reasons otherwise. The unmet need for additional pitches within the district is a significant material consideration that outweighs any effect on the rural character of the area. As the officer's report states, approving this application will help the Council to meet its statutory duty in this regard and accord with Policy H of the Planning Policy for Travellers Sites and Policy H6 of the West Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy. On the issue of sustainability, your officer accepts that the site is sustainable and approximately a mile from the facilities of Wigan. Pedestrian access is facilitated by a pavement running on the length of the route. It is agreed by the Council that a single gypsy pitch will not place an undue pressure on local infrastructure. As noted in the report, the site is well screened, and development of the site would be an opportunity to improve the visual amenity of the area with proposed soft landscaping. This accords with paragraph 24 of the PPTS. This single pitch site does not have an unacceptable impact on nearby properties, a point that your officer agrees with, neither will it dominate the nearby settlement. This is also agreed in the case officer's report. The Highways Department has raised no objection subject to the suggested condition 3, and this is accepted by my client. The Environment Agency is satisfied that the plans and the flood risk assessment put forward in the application are sufficient to mitigate any flood risk to the site. The recommendation for approval comes with 12 conditions, and our client, Mr. Biddle, is happy to comply with all of the conditions. On this basis, I urge you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right, local member.
Thank you. First, I've got a letter from Johnny Amos, who's also a local member, clearly not on the planning committee. I won't read his letter this evening because it pretty much covers everything that's been covered by the residents, etc. So hopefully that's acceptable. I will read, however, the first paragraph, which says, as a district councillor for the parish of Stowe 9 churches, I would like to give my full and unequivocal support to the parish council of Stowe against the proposed approval of the pitch. so it goes through much more detail. Quite interesting to listen to the agent. So there's a pavement there, is there? There's no pavement outside of this pitch. Fact. The pavement is on the opposite side of the A5. And if I were living there and I had children sending off to school, they would have to cross the A5, go down, go north along the A5, past Clark's garage and negotiate potentially any vehicles going in and out of there, and then cross the A5 again into Church Street, which then leads into Wheaton. So that's an absolute fact. There is no footpath outside of this pitch. This picture we're seeing here is the opposite side. So this is Clark's garage, and this is facing south going towards Turstow. I'm sure everybody heard the concerns with regard to enforcement, so I won't go any further with that, but it's clearly a big concern for people that we have conditions within an application, and if they're broken, they need to be enforced. So that's a big concern. I think we do have to at least take that on board. We may not agree with it, but enforcement is key in instances such as this. At this stage, I can't support officers' advice. It's by a SLA. It's in an open countryside outside the confines of the village. And more importantly, I have a big problem from a nuisance that we could actually create, a statutory nuisance from the sewage works. Now, this site is, as it actually details in the report, 2 fields away. It's not 2 fields away. It's in fact the site you're seeing there with the hedges and things. That is overall the site as I know it. Certainly, I mean, I'm a resident of Wheaton, so I know it very well. So you see the sewage works there, just to the west of it. We have a prevailing wind which is westerly. So any nuisance from smell from that site is going to immediately be delivered to the residents there. So gale force steam, in my opinion. I wouldn't want to live there. I wouldn't put my children there. Why should, if somebody is looking to live, why should they be forced to take a site which is far from ideal? I don't think they should. I think it's terrible. And in fact, we have a code of practice which is issued by Daventry, which references instances such as this. Now, there's a number of areas that we go across or cover. That's the reason why I think we should actually go against officers' advice. But I'll reference Daventry's code of practice on odium nuisance from sewage treatment works, which I think we need to really take notice of. I won't read the whole thing. I'll read the paragraph which is most relevant. And it reads, secondly, there's the issue of proposed or actual development close to sewage works, often termed encroachment. Planning Policy Statement 23 states that local planning authorities need to consider carefully the proximity and location of existing developments, such as sewage treatment works, when drawing up plans to allocate new developments. Such developments may be affected by odour from the works and a statutory nuisance created where it did not exist before. That would be crazy, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be absolutely bonkers to do that? Encroachment of odour-sensitive development around sewage treatment works can lead to significant problems with existing sewage treatment works becoming subject to complaints, perhaps for the first time. At the same time, people in the area who may be affected by statutory odour nuisance need protection by the local authority, whose responsibility it is to enforce the abatement of statutory nuisances. Important, I think. Customers and water companies also need protecting from effectively financing the upgrade of local environment land sold cheap to developers through charging customers higher water bills to fund the cessation or abatement of ensuing statutory nuisance. In some cases, an operator may itself have sold the land for developers indirectly introduce new receptors. The occupiers of any new development are likely to expect and demand high amenity standard, and this could result in complaints. Different circumstances between sorry about this. I've lost my place, sorry, boy. Differing circumstances between individual works makes a standard distance cordon sanitaire difficult. In other words, sometimes it may be relevant, well, it could, if it were, for example, in this instance, if the site were west of the sewage site, then you could argue they're not going to necessarily suffer a nuisance in the same way. But everybody can see it's clearly there. I walk my dog around there. I know when the pond is going. And I know some people say, well, the narrowboat's there. Well, that's actually just south, so it's not in direct line of the gale force hole. Anyway, and then the report goes on. The operation and complaints history of sewage treatment works and other potential odor nuisances should be carefully considered by planning authorities before permitting new developments in the immediate vicinity. Now, I think we can say that in the immediate vicinity. And then it goes through the fact that the authority, or we as an authority, should actually have consulted with the owners of that sewage plant as well. So there's actually guidance there for us, and it seems that in the report we've seen this evening, there's nothing there, nothing at all. So that's, I think we need to lend some weight to that. Other areas, as has been said, it's right beside conservation area, it's building an open countryside outside the confines of the beach. As I stand, I can't see any reason for us to accept this, and I would propose that we actually go against officers' advice this evening.
Could you give us your planning reasons?
Building open countryside, an adverse effect to the SLA, so J2G. Might need some other help here. Obviously, I don't know what particular planning reason we would attach with relation to the code of practice and the paragraph which is read. So it needs probably some guidance on that.
I'm sure we can get some advice on that. Do you have a seconder? Yes, we do have a seconder. Would you like to speak now, sir?
Not at the moment, Chair.
You reserve your right.
I do.
Okay, Councillor Franklin's next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm conflicted by this application. I spent this morning at a training session on gypsies, travellers and travelling show people to do with our local plan part 2B, to be specific. And it was very interesting talking to other parish councillors who had extensive experience of travellers' sites, mainly in the north-ish of the district. She said that when they're good, they're excellent, but when they're bad, they're very bad. So you can't really prejudge whether this would be a good or a bad pitch. But I do have to say that if I was a resident and I built that building in my garden as a bungalow, I would not get planning permission for it. I don't see why a group of people can circumvent the planning regulations just because they happen to belong to a what the government call a class of people of gypsies, travellers and travelling show people. It seems to be unfair on the settled population that they are treated differently in this respect. The first line of the report says the proposed non-transient single mobile home, which obviously says they're not travelling. So to my mind it should be treated as if it was a permanent house being built there. And looking at the picture on the front of the cover of this report that I was given, there is a non-transient mobile home on there that looks like a house to me. And on no other grounds could I agree to something like that being built in the open countryside for one class of our residents, when another class of our residents wouldn't be allowed to build it because it was in the open countryside. So I would leave it at that at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Franklin, Councillor Owen.
Yes, as you know, the gypsies have been a subject of mine for some time. As I represent the ward of Welford, and we have 23 gypsy pitches in Great Oxenden, plus 4 in Ardingworth Parish. And I am also part of a forum where we try to find a solution for the gypsy and travellers. Now, looking at that site, the concerns I have are of twofold. First, when you look at the entrance of the site, I do believe that on the report, NCC have made some, it is very dangerous look at how it goes up and after directly on the A5. I don't think that this ramp is far too dangerous up to the A5 with no play on the side. So I don't think it is very good. And I think they need to address the access. My second point is that traveller community normally live in groups, and that would be a single occupant with quite a huge day room. The day room seems quite a bit too big, and not really with the guidance of day room in the guidance given by the government. If you look at the day room, it's 6 meters long for the main room, so it's quite a huge structure. Day rooms normally tend to be a bit smaller. Half the size. That would be 2 day rooms. In nothing worse, that is the size of 2 day rooms. You have special guidance for day rooms, and they should not exceed a certain dimension. And finally, what I am also surprised is that you just have one caravan, and that means that the gypsy family will be of a very small unit, which in my experience is not the case for gypsy family. So I try to find a reason. The fact that it is a gypsy group, so under the legislation we have to consider them under the travelling and community show people. So they have a planning application that is specific to them. It's an open countryside. It doesn't really matter, because when you are gypsy and traveller show people, you are under another regulation as far as planning is concerned. But for me, I think we have to think of the well-being of the traveller, how they can integrate in our community. And that size, as it is, down the way it is not cohesive with being well outside for the well-being of the travelling family. So that would be my ground for refusal if I would be minded that way. It's a well-being, and as you have to accept that a gypsy group need to integrate and not live like that. I would not like my family to live there. So why? I know they need to find site, and that site has been sold to them, and it's not truly an appropriate site for a building. That is my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owenshire. Would you like to say something first?
It's not the County Council is the highway authority, it's the highways with the Belgian Highway Authority. As the report sets out, they have raised no objections to the application in respect to public safety. So if members are looking at refusing the application on the safety grounds, then you need to provide the evidence that will substantiate those concerns and persuade an inspector on that particular point. Do you want to go on, or do you want to, is there no particular points?
While you're on, pick up your points here.
The side of the...
Hold on a second.
The code of practice that was referred to by Councillor Smith. In terms of the status of that document, it says that it's a voluntary code of practice, and that the Secretary of State in England and National Assembly for Wales do not currently have the power to give statutory approval to codes of practice on odor nuisance. Again, yeah, I understand the point in terms of concerns about odours, etc. But in refusing the application on those grounds, again, members will need to, and the Council will need to provide evidence as to why the proposal would create such an adverse impact on the community as to warrant refusing permission, given the relevant planning policies. Anglian Water, we've actually produced some advice on asking encroachment. Do provide some pointers to consider when looking at developments in or close to sewage treatment plants, or one of those is, what is the planning status of the land? What's the history of complaints on a particular treatment works? How many properties are currently the same distance or less from the works as the proposed development? And what is the nature of the proposed development? Well, clearly the status of the land is agricultural or equestrian in terms of the history. I've checked with the Environmental Health Office service today. There is no history of any complaints in respect of the treatment works. Certainly they don't have any records of complaints. In terms of properties currently the same distance, there's a residential property just to the east, again, sewage treatment plant to the west. Members will also have been referred to various barges along the canal. There's a narrowboat pub restaurant which is on the east side of the A5, and then obviously there's the commercial garage to the north. I'm not aware of any complaints having been received from those properties in respect of odours from the particular facility. So in terms of the odour issue, clearly members are entitled to give some consideration to that, but in using it as a reason for refusal, members need to be wary of the need to produce evidence to substantiate that reason for refusal when considered against the development plan policies. The development plan policies, whether you like it or not, dealing with the travelling community under H6, and that is the policy under which you should be considering this application. The report quite carefully considers the proposal under the relevant criteria in that policy and deems it to be acceptable. And again, if members feel there's a conflict with that policy, then you need to provide the evidence to demonstrate why there is a conflict with that policy and why that conflict is so harmful as to warrant resisting the application. Nothing further to add at this stage, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you, Chairman. I have listened to and I understand the views of the local residents in this particular case. It's not unusual to hear views like that, although it is unusual to have the integrity and competence of the local planning authority called into question in public, but I will try not to let that colour my view. It's quite clear to me that there is no substantial planning reason to do other than approve this application. The concerns about access have been dealt with by the local highway authority, and as we just heard from the officer reinforcing that, we would find, in order to go against that, it will be necessary to find substantial evidence to show that they're wrong. After all, they are the experts. The comment about the size of the day room, the planning guidelines for gypsies and travellers and travelling show people issued by the government in August 2015 makes reference to the provision of such facility. It makes no indication at all about their size. It's not within our competence as planners to question the size of somebody's facility that they choose to provide, provided it's within planning guidelines, which it clearly is. I'm disappointed in some of the things that I've heard, but nevertheless, I think members need to be clear that, as the officer has pointed out this evening, and it's clearly made clear in the report, there is no substantial planning reason to do other than follow the officer's advice and approve this application. And that's the position I find myself in at the moment, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chamberlain. Councillor Order.
Yeah, I do agree with Councillor Chandler on quite a few issues, and I do have a lot of trust and confidence in the work of our officers when putting these applications together. I may not always agree, and I'm quite open about not agreeing, but I have a lot of confidence. You don't do sewage work and the possible consequences of it's a question just really, are you quite satisfied that any consequences of any problems relating to that site of sewage would not fall upon the council with regard to having to put the problem right. So you're quite happy that we wouldn't be subject to, you know, as a result of us agreeing it, we are then responsible for subsequent problems as a result of that. So are you happy?
Well, there's a well-known sort of rule that's accepted in planning, is that planning should not stray into other regulations.
Right.
And you know, if planning permission were given and there were such complaints, they would be investigated under the relevant environmental health regulations, pollution regulations, as to whether or not there was a statutory nuisance. And again, you know, we cannot see what will happen in the future. We have to determine the application that is before you and what is being sought planning permission for. Suffice it to say, there are other regulations outside of the planning process that will investigate such complaints.
Okay, I'm talking about cause and effect, you know, by the fact that we act in this way then causes a problem for us that we should be by.
No, that's not the issue.
Okay, sir. And the other thing is, it was an attack on, that there are a number of conditions down, and part of the narratives I heard, you know, which I do have sympathy for, and do note your concerns and worries, was the fact that some of those concerns have been rectified by the conditions laid down. But then there seems to be a lack of confidence that those conditions will be then enforced. I think it would be appropriate really for the officers to reassure not only that the conditions will be enforced in a way that they're enforced in all other planning cases. And I wondered whether it would be good to allay those concerns from the people that object.
Well, again, you're asking me to look into the future. All I can say to you tonight is that, as with any planning application, planning authority is to consider planning applications to judge on its planning merits. If conditions help mitigate the impact of that development, and those conditions satisfy the relevant tests in terms of being directly relevant to the application, necessary, reasonable in all regards, etc., then conditions should be imposed. As to whether conditions are breached in the future, it is a matter at that point in time for the Council to consider those breaches and to consider the expediency of enforcing against those breaches. But to say that a local authority has not got the willingness, etc., to investigate breaches, personally, I find it disappointing. Suffice it to say that officers and the Council, when concerns are raised, do investigate them very thoroughly, and we do pursue enforcement action where it is considered expedient. The process allows for rights of appeal against even breaches of planning control, because the planning system sets a presumption in favour of development. Okay? So the conditions that are before us, we're satisfied they meet the tests, we're satisfied they're relevant to the development, and in terms of regulation, we're satisfied on its planning merits, the proposal is accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Darrell. And there seems to be an appetite there to investigate any breach in the future. So,
Okay.
so Mr. Darrell, just from what you said, there is that appetite, and so we thank you.
But again, Chairman, through you, I cannot predict what's going to happen.
No,
All I can say is this Council has a policy on investigating breaches of planning control.
That's all I wanted to hear.
And that policy is maintained across the district.
Thank you.
We've got two more speakers on line. Councillor Patchett, then Councillor Ovensbury.
Thank you, Chairman. A few questions have been answered.
Okay, Councillor Ovensbury. Sorry.
Yes, first, the highway says that the development hereby permit shall not be occupied unless and until highway improvement work to the access from the site to the A5 are completed and open to traffic. So, the design of such road shall comply. So the highway have commented and say that till it's open and in accordance to what they say, the child should not be occupied. Secondly, when it was on me, and I have to say I have spent quite a lot of time about the gypsy, what was on me is that side, it is a very enclosed side, and on the Department for Community and Local Government policy, planning policy for traveller site, and that was August 2015. It says Just a second, sorry for that, I had it now. It's basically that the site should not be enclosed, should be open, should be, and that site for me is low inside, completely outside of sight of everybody, and that is not good planning. And on the planning guidance of 2015, it says that the gypsy and traveller site should be open, airy, well designed, and being in a dip with high fences all around. I don't, and with quite a lot of hardcore, I don't think it is with the guidance that was given in 2015. Look, when you look at the picture further, just before the day room, when you look just the other, the one, you can see it's below the road here. It's hidden from the side, or from the view of everybody. I don't think it doesn't help the Seco community and the Gypsy community to bridge the gap they can have together. It is quite the opposite of what I would like to see for a Gypsy policy that is coherent. Out of sight, out of mind, that is what, for me, that site says.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's unfortunate that so many traveller sites seem to be situated near sewage works and the associated smells. I'm thinking of, for example, Crow Lane in Northampton traveller site. In this particular case, I think the sewage works are indeed well established at the moment, and there's certainly not going to be any surprises for any future occupants. They will know what they're letting themselves in for, as it were. And much as I've tried to look through the documentation I've got in front of me, I can't find a planning objection on the grounds of the sewage works being near. If any other member can give me one, I'll be pleased to support them, but I cannot find one, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I must concur with my colleague directly behind me. The opening remarks made from the original speaker weren't helpful at all. I've worked with officers of this council for the last 12 years, and I found them totally competent and have no reason to suggest that they're not in a public forum. But moving on, a couple of comments from my colleagues. It may look like a house, first and foremost, but it's not. It's a mobile house, so therefore that part of it. There was a comment made about being forced to live there. Well, nobody's forcing them to live there. Comment was made regarding the Grand Union Canal. The Grand Union Canal water level is low down there, the banks are high, so therefore that wouldn't present a problem as I see it. The officer has already said that various locations are within the same distance, near enough, as the proposed site. Interestingly, there have been absolutely no comments whatsoever, or no complaints whatsoever, to the environmental health officer from any of those sites with smell emitting from that site. I have total empathy with residents, I have total empathy with villages, etc. But we are left with a fait accompli. The fait accompli is that the government of the day said that we have to do something. And a couple of my colleagues have said that they can't find a planning reason for this to be refused that would stand up for appeal. And unfortunately, I can't. There was a comment made with regards to it's outside the confines of a village. I can probably assure people that not only this chamber would be full, but the building would be full if it was within the confines of a village. However, I refer to my colleague earlier when she spoke about access, and it is covered by the highways on condition 3 about the improvements to the access, visibilities, greys, etc. And I wholeheartedly agree with her that nobody should be resident on that site until those actions in condition 3 are complied with. Apart from that, Chairman, I can't find any planning reason, although it galls me, but any planning reason to refuse this, and I have to go with officer's advice.
Thank you. Now take one more speaker, then go to the vote. Councillor Smith has indicated he'd like to speak again.
I think, yeah.
Oh, and you reserve your right. I do beg your pardon. There'll be two of you speaking.
I think planning reason, I think it's very poor design within the, I'll read it correctly, Department for Communities and Local Government Planning Policy for Travel Sites. Point 26D, not enclosing the site with so much hard landscaping, high walls or fences, the impression may be given that the site and its occupants are deliberately isolated from the rest of the community. The pictures clearly demonstrate that.
You want also to add those two reasons?
I think we should add that there. I think the other things we've had a reference to breaches or to address enforcement when there's been breaches. The applicant has breached planning already. He's put a structure up with no planning whatsoever, which is reference to a barn in the documents. I'd like the committee to be aware that there's never been a barn in the 10 years I've lived there. What was there previously was a ramshackle wooden stable, and this fairly substantial building has replaced it. I think hoodwinked comes to mind sometimes. I'm not at all happy with this. The highways may be making their points that they don't have an issue. I drive the A5 regularly, as do the residents of Stowe, Wheaton, etc., etc. A neighbour approached me this morning. He was almost involved in an accident with a vehicle coming out of his site last week. The vehicle had come up the ramp, and as we've all seen, it's a very steep ramp. Can you imagine towing up that? I've towed many times in the past from my farming background, and I certainly wouldn't be dragging anything up there if I were using a tractor, let alone probably a fairly underpowered van or whatever. It is an accident waiting to happen. I guarantee we will be reading about it in the gutter at some stage. This is a ludicrous application, and I need some help to get this turned around. It's very difficult on planning, on a planning perspective. I think we're all in agreement with that. Stoke Parish Council absolutely understands that, which is why they're so vocal in their concerns with regard to enforcement, because if we get it, and the view is that the committee would be minded to accept it. Officers advised rather it didn't happen on this instance, but this is all about the enforcement, and there's some sense needs to come into this, and there's no sense in this. If you live here, if you know this particular site, you know that whatever Highways England have said, they're wrong. They're absolutely wrong. And I believe, and I don't know, but has the officer in Highways England, has he been to the site, or has he done a desktop survey? I mean, how is it acceptable that there isn't a footpath, which was referenced there is no footpath on the west side of the A5 in this spot? In fact, I don't think there's any footpath on the west side of the A5 until you get to, in fact, I don't think there's any footpath until Toaster. So you can imagine a child crossing this road. How's it sustainable? So you've got to cross the A5, up that ramp, cross the A5, walk down past Clark's garage. Here we see it. So you've been walking along this footpath. You've then got to negotiate crossing the A5 again. Busy time of day, between 8 and 9 in the morning. Bonkers, absolutely madness. I mean, none of our children, we wouldn't want none of our children to be crossing that. I've feared for my life, and I'm not exaggerating sometimes. When I'm trying to cross the road with my beautiful brown Labrador, coming from left to right to go towards Floor, it's blooming well dangerous. And as it's been referenced in 2006, 15th December, a young lad from Wheaton was killed along this verge, just as we're seeing here, by a HGV, a Renault truck. It's just, to me, it's an unacceptable application, and I just wish I could find the plain reasons to turn it down.
Thank you. I think we just must make the point that somebody that starts a planning application and then puts in planning permission afterwards, which is called a retrospective planning application, there's nothing wrong. It is part of the system. The system allows for that. Officers are not wrong by taking that. That happens every day at lots of different councils. There is nothing, that is part of the planning system. If this application was to be refused, enforcement action would not be taken because if the applicant appeals either, because the appeal would be heard first. So again, there's nothing wrong with that. That is the system again. So let's get the system right so that people are aware what does happen and that officers are doing their jobs. Right, Councillor Parker, you're the last person to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to the DEFRA document. Mr McDowell's absolutely right. Codes of practice are not statutory. That's why they're codes of practice. And there's lots of them, not just on planning, but on lots of things. So they are the next level down. If anything happens, people tend to revert to codes of practice. Most certainly health and safety executive do. It says here, the code considers that it would be good practice for planning authorities, if they do not already do so, to consult environmental health authorities and sewage companies before developments around sewage treatment works is permitted. I don't see where that's happened. If it's written as good practice, then I believe that is what should take place. And I don't think we can just dismiss that because it's not statutory. Good practice, I've said before, there are many good practices across many industries.
Okay, thank you.
And I wouldn't want Daventry to be open to anything.
Could you come to my you'd like to make a comment before we go to the vote?
All I can refer to is the report which does refer to the consultation responses from both the Environment Agency and Environmental Health. And as I said, I have advised members of a conversation I've had with the Environmental Health Officer today in respect to the sewage treatment works. If members still feel strongly about it, I've also referred to the advice from Anglian Water and the issues to take account of when considering developments in and around sewage treatment works. If members don't feel sufficiently confident in that advice, you're perfectly entitled to seek a formal view from Anglian Water in terms of whether or not they consider this development would be an issue for them. What I would have to say to you is that those considerations would not in themselves be sufficient to outweigh the advice we're giving to members this evening. But you're perfectly entitled. You're the planning committee, so exactly. We're setting the recommendation to you. So you put forward your propositions and vote on it.
Okay, we've got a proposition which I think has two parts added to it. The last part was the fact that it shouldn't be enclosed the way it is.
By design.
All right. And the first part was, do you want to repeat it again, Councillor?
So we've got obviously purely go
on the edge of an SLA, I think.
On the edge of an SLA, yes. So that's GN2G.
Yeah.
Megan kindly pointed out. Conservation area as well.
Canal conservation area.
Yeah.
So it's on the edge of the canal, right? Okay. So you've got three things. So those are the three reasons.
That's what we've tried for.
Okay. That's been seconded. Right. So there's a proposition that it be refused for those three given reasons. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Those against. And this is one of the most difficult votes I will ever have to make, I would think, because a lot of things councillors are saying are correct. I believe the Highways Agency is completely wrong. I think it's a lethal junction to go in and out of. equally it'll be difficult to sustain it as appeal. So I'm going to vote with the officers. Okay? That's his advice. I'm sorry, local member. We need the proposition the other way around, apparently.
I'll make that,
Okay. Councillor Chartler.
I propose that we approve the application following officer's advice, Chairman.
Councillor Paul.
Yes, I'm happy to second it. Reluctantly, however, as I said in my previous statement, I cannot find a planning reason which would hold up in appeal. There we are, Chairman.
Okay. We've got a proposition that's been seconded. Nobody wishes to talk about it?
No, Chair, I wish to propose an amendment to the proposition in that we, rather than go for an approval, we go for an adjournment and to further consider this matter.
On what ground?
On the grounds that I don't believe that everything's been talked about yet.
On the grounds that we're waiting for the Angle of Water report.
Well, I don't think we can do that. Can we?
Yeah.
All right.
It's a shame that we've done the reverse because I don't think that's necessary, and I've previously advised I don't think that's necessary, but since that motion's been put, Councillor Robertson's perfectly entitled to propose an amendment.
Right, so your amendment is, Councillor Robson?
That we defer this application for further consideration.
To when?
Next meeting.
Next time. Do you have a second? In consideration of what, sorry?
In consideration of the report we're missing, which was something to do with
Angle of Water. Okay, that's fair enough.
Through you, Chairman, the alternative would be to consider whether you wish to propose approval, agreement to this proposal, subject to there being no negative comments from the Clean Water.
So if the concern of the committee is the fact that there would be a negative comment come back from the consultee, the application would not go ahead.
Chairman, could we add that as condition 13 then?
The committee could do, but we've got a proposal that it be deferred for that purpose.
And Bob, Mr. Patton seconded it.
And it's been seconded.
Do we know about the amendment?
We've actually got two proposals, Chairman. Councillor Chandler proposed agree, and I've said we've got Councillor
That's an amendment.
The amendment. You always take the amendment first.
Right. So we'll take the amendment first and the application be deferred until the next planning committee meeting, whereby we'll get more information from AWA, isn't it? Yeah. All those in agreement, please show. Those against? No, I don't think it will make any difference, so I shall vote against the amendment. Now we've got the proposition that the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show. 6. Those against? That's right. 6. And I'm the bad guy that is voting with the officers. So the application is approved. Sorry, Councillor Robinson.
I have a comment to make. One of the councillors said that we had no good planning reason. Strangely enough, when I said about the design of the site, that is a good planning reason. And to object to that, we have, and the design is very important for the well-being of the applicant.
That was the third one. Yeah. I think it is a planning reason,
Yeah, it is a planning reason.
I don't think it's a good one, but I think it's a...
It is a planning reason.
It's a planning reason, yes, I do agree.
And one councillor said it was no planning reason.
No, I agree with that.
Thank you.
But the application is approved. If we have 2 minutes adjournment, so people who came... Right, we resume.
Yes.
The next application is is in drought 0738.
Thank you, Chairman. The site is within the Cherry Orchard estate of Daventry. It is an application for the change of use to garden land, including a fence. The fence has been constructed already. The area of land was included within the red line of the original development by Taylor Wimpey and is currently within the ownership still of Taylor Wimpey. The current owners and previous owners of 2 Cameron Close have been maintaining this piece of land. The site is not public open space but private. It will be to similar alignment to the neighbouring property to the rear. The fence line does need to be altered, reduced in height for a 4-metre section to 1 metre in height, adjoining the current 1-metre high fence which you can see in the photos. This is in response from the Crime Prevention Design Advisor and the Landscape Officer. The applicant is happy to do this. Condition 3 also needs to be amended to ensure that this is carried out within a period of 6 months of the date of submission. In addition, Condition 4 needs adding Part 2, Class A of the General Permitted Development Allowances to remove permitted development for means of enclosure. So we've got control over any future means of enclosure. Therefore, this application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Catherine. We have one speaker, Mr. Eales, is it? Yeah. Mr. Isle, am I pronouncing it right? Is the applicant here to speak? No, okay. Local member, who's Drayton Wards?
Local members, right?
Local member, any comments from anybody?
Yes, Chairman. I've been up and had a look. It's still quite open. There's plenty of way of looking wherever we have to go. It's not stopping the view of anything, and I think it should be okay. And I'm happy to go with the officer's advice.
Your proposal.
Our proposal.
Thank you. Do you have a second? Thank you, Councillor Frenchman. Anybody else wish to speak? Pretty straightforward. We've got these sort of sites in every village.
I vote.
All those in agreement, please show.
Oh, isn't that an easy application?
Right, no casting vote this time. Right, good.
Do we wait to see the application for a house on that side?
I said the very same thing. The next application, if I've got it right, is in Stratton, and it's 0991.
This is a site which benefits from a long-standing outline planning permission for land adjacent to that Yew Tree Cottage, Yew Tree Lane and Stratton. The principle of residential development is acceptable given the outline planning permission. Members need to consider the siting, scale, design, landscaping of the proposal only. The red line remains the same as the existing extant outline permission. It is considered that the overall design and appearance of the property and scale and landscaping are all appropriate to the site and the surroundings. The local highway authority would like to see the existing wall at the front reduced in height. In this case, consider the usage of this lane and that this wall is an important feature. It's considered that this outweighs the highway's request in this particular case, and it's unlikely that it would result in detrimental impact. Local residents have raised concerns regarding the location of the garage at the front of the site. However, it's considered it will not have an adverse impact on the surroundings. There are other garages along there which have garages to the front of the sites. The garage is unlikely to result in a detrimental impact to the amenities of the adjoining neighbour through loss of light, given its location and the sunlight where it rises, where it sets. And also the garage has been amended to reduce any impact. Concern has been raised regarding the overdevelopment of the site. However, given the character of the site, or the surrounding area, there are other properties which has got similar development or development on the land, namely including 16A New Tree Lane. It's considered that property will not result in any overlooking to the adjoining neighbours. It will result in the loss of trees, however the landscape officer considers that these will not have an impact on the wider landscape. Overall, considering the principle of residential development has been granted on the site, the design, siting, scale are all acceptable. Given the character of the locality, it's recommended for approval. Members' attention is drawn to the late representations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. Got two speakers, I believe. Mr. Fox, who's against the application?
Chairman, councillors, I'm representing the immediate neighbours. There are 3 slides which you'll see. One, that's not one of them. If you could play the 3, yes, that's the first slide. Could you remove it up, please? So you should see the whole site. The basis of the objection of the immediate neighbours is not the development site. That is already decided, but the manner it is proposed to develop the site. The site is smaller than its neighbours, yet the house is as large and as such leads to other problems. The main one is the location of the garage to the front of the site, and as such is contrary to your local plan at paragraph 3.113, which presumes against garages to the front of properties as it impacts detrimentally on street character. It is clear from the current ordnance survey plan showing the eastern side of Yew Tree Lane that there are no separate garages along its length to the front of properties. The design of the proposed garage is also a matter of concern, as it has a pyramid roof, which is not a local form of roof design, and contributes to the visual impact that the garage will have on the location as submitted. I draw your attention to the photograph superimposed on which is an approximate position of the proposed garage. We realise that it is not a matter for this committee to suggest alterations to an application, but an integral garage would overcome this policy objection. It would also overcome the objection from your council's landscape officer, who recognises that massing of the garage should be softened by moving it further away from the front wall. He also notes that the loss of trees due to the form of development on the plot cannot be replaced elsewhere on the plot. Removing the separate garage building would enable trees to be planted to the front of the site. I mentioned that the original permission was obtained by the late Mr. Coulter, deceased, and his design and access statement to your council said, under landscaping, existing trees will remain and no hedges will be destroyed. By way of background, the applicant, Oast Lodge Limited, bought the property with planning permission in August 2007 from the deceased estate, and you are looking at its proposals, not the proposals of the deceased to obtain the permission. As submitted, with the garage to the front, it is considered that the development proposal is over-development of the site. Policy GN2 and EN42 seek to ensure no unacceptable impact to the amenities of the area and to ensure that the development blends well within the site and its surroundings. As such, this proposal is considered to be contrary to both of these policies. Chairman, we would respectfully ask that this application is refused on the basis of paragraph 3.113 and policies GN2 criterion A and EN42 criterion C.
Thank you. Mr. Renyon, the applicant.
Yes. Hello. As you've heard, it's an old outline consent which goes all the way back to 1975. Indeed, when the late Mr. Jim Coulter lived in the cottage, whose land this formed part of. I actually spent the first 13 years of my life, from 1974, living at Hunters Park, the last house on the lane. Immediately to the south of this plot, there was no house, just a large entrance to fields. Since I left the area, there's been 6 new houses developed in the vicinity. The applicant, Oast Lodge Limited, you heard, we're based in East Haddon. We're a family-owned company run by my parents, my brother and me. it's highly likely a family member would live at the house. So it's not just some plan thrown together to maximise value, there has been careful consideration. Going to the two objections raised regarding overdevelopment, there's approximately 2 metres between the side elevations of the property and the side boundaries. There are 2 small grass terraces at the front and a private rear garden of over 1,200 square foot, which look out to the paddock onto over Brixworth and Pixford. Bearing this in mind and looking at the scale of surrounding properties, we would not class our proposal as overdevelopment of the site. If we can flick up a few photos of opposite, there's about 1 metre, if that, between that house and the fence, another metre to the side of it. That one is indeed quite tightly packed in. There is a great deal more room, double the room at least, around the side of our property. Regarding the roof, the parish council objected to the original ridged roof on the garage and suggested a hip roof. We went and did that, and now it's not right apparently. And the location of the garage, it's 7.5 metres away from the neighbour's nearest front window, which really does minimise any impact it may have. It is near in front of the house. Put it nearer, away from the road, and it would have an impact on the neighbour, whilst reducing the breathing space between the garage and the proposed dwelling, which would be visually detrimental and actually increase the bulk of the overall development. In addition, some dead space would be created between the stone wall and garage, the kind of space that ends up being used for bins and storage, not visually attractive. The stone wall I refer to, finally, the adjacent cottage, along with its garage and workshop, which fronts the road. The garage does help continue this built form. The garage walls will actually be hidden largely by the 1.6 metre high stone wall, so not like a big white block as we saw earlier, on the roadside elevation, and also the neighbour's hedge to the south. In addition, due to the curve of the stone wall, there is actually space for planting some attractive climbers on the roadside corner of the garage, which again would really decrease any impact it may have. As a general point, we do intend to carry out attractive landscaping and planting on the site, as there is plenty of space and opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Local councillor,
Thank you, Chair. This is a difficult one because obviously it's got planning permission going back to, I think it's 1975 off the top of my head. And I think if it came forward today that we would be 50-50 chance that it wouldn't get through planning, but it's where it is and we have to decide on the merits of what's in front of us. I do have some sympathy with what Mr. Cox said. I think it is a very big house for the plot, and those of you who know Yew Tree Lane know it's a sort of quiet and tranquil country road almost that is a dead end. And we had that stable application the other day, which I had to excuse myself from. And that was thrown out for various reasons, but I think what does spoil this design is the garage to the front, and I also don't like the way that the driveway curves round. I can see a stage where the old cottage is demolished and the 12 new houses are looked to be built on the rest of the garden site, but that's not in front of us, so I am just using that as a throwaway line. I can't see any grounds immediately for refusing this, so I'd like to hear what my colleagues on the committee have to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, please? I don't see anyone to say a lot. Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, the site does have planning approval going back to the year dot. It mirrors the house opposite. The house opposite, as we've said, is hideous. I've heard the applicant say that there will be sympathetic plantings and climbers on the garage. I can't take the superimposed garage, as it were, as being to scale, etc. I have no hesitation in approving officers' advice, and you can take that as a proposal, please, Chairman.
I have done indeed. Right, do you have a second? Yes. Cabin School. Councillor Ed, I think you're the first time.
I don't mind.
Do you wish to say something or not?
I'll second it.
Yeah, but you don't want to say
No, I don't need to speak. I didn't think it needs to be said.
Councillor Swift, you wish to say something?
Yes, the applicant mentioned that he will do landscaping. Could we have a condition for soft landscaping around the garage, if that is possible? Could we add that?
I'm assured you can. Councillor Organ next, I think.
Yeah, it was just really the points from the testimony of the applicant that there had been obviously some sort of correspondence between himself and the parish with regard to design, and changes were made, and we take that testimony as one is true. So I think there has been an attempt at local consultation to help allay the fears of the local people. That's why I propose, I can't see any kind of reason against it, propose to support officers. Thank you.
So could we add the soft landscaping?
Yes.
Yes?
Thank you.
They've said that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, we have a proposal that the application be approved, which has been seconded, subject to an additional condition about landscaping on the garage. All those in favour, please show. Right, those against, one abstention. We'd like to re-record this one, guys.
Yes, please.
Okay, one abstention. The application is approved, subject to that one condition, addition. The next application, we'll give you 2 minutes. Right, the next application is in Byfield, and the number is I skipped by the on the top one, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Chairman. The application comprises a relatively modern property, I would say probably 70s, 80s, of a design that is of its time, alongside its adjoining properties. Basically quite distinctive square box with a flat roof, garage projecting in the front. The application as originally submitted proposed quite a large 2-storey extension projecting forward of the house, effectively demolishing the existing flat roof element and rebuilding it as a 2-storey extension, which officers judged to be totally unacceptable in terms of street scene, design of the building and amenity of neighbouring properties. And through negotiation we sought amendments to the application which effectively brings the profile of the main house forward and still replicates a flat roof projection still at the front of the property. In planning terms, we judge this to be acceptable in terms of the amenity of the properties, the amenity of neighbouring properties, street scene, and generally, on its planning merits, acceptable. Nothing further to add, Chairman.
Thank you. I wonder if the local member is.
Thank you, Chairman. Very briefly, this came to committee because the Parish Council objected. Parish Council objected on 3 grounds. One was the detrimental effect on the street scene. You've seen the photograph. The other 2 objections were on behalf of the neighbours either side, saying they would find it totally unacceptable. you'll notice from the report that the neighbours did not submit any objections on their own back, and I have no hesitation in proposing that we accept officers' advice and approve the application.
Thank you. Was that a second? Second, Councillor Officer.
Brilliant.
Nobody wishes to speak, I do they? All those in favour, please show.
You can vote on it, Chair.
Thank you very much. The application is approved. Thank you, Councillor Charter. Yeah. Now I think we're in Byfield. 1144.
Thanks, Chairman. This is a wait to the for those of you who know, Byfield, the site lies to the west of Byfield. It's the old POW camp. Since the end of the war, no longer housed, but a lot of long-established various businesses of various appearances, etc. The application is an application to the County Council for a proposed waste transfer station, effectively removing some of the existing uses on site and replacing it with a new building. So DDC is being consulted by the county for its comments. You'll see from the report that officers referred to previous consultations where the council didn't raise an objection to the principle of the new building, but did have concerns about it impacting the local highway network. We regret to advise that we understand the highway authority, those comments are set out, have still got concerns about the proposal, and we stand by those concerns. Accordingly, recommending the application, we object to the application on the grounds set out in the report. Nothing really to add, Chairman. I'm happy to answer the questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Griffin, I think. Yes, you're going first.
Local councillors are very concerned about this. It's come before you before, and we thought we'd seen it off then, but I was warned that these things do come up again, and here it is. I think you probably all have read this very comprehensive report. All our local members would support the contents of that report. I would just add, I've already written to the Principal Development Control Officer at County on similar lines. I'll just add that on a recent appeal, which was refused by a planning inspector, he said that Boddington Road is a busy back road used as a cut through to the A361 by villages to the west of Byfield with a significant amount of traffic, and he refused the further access onto the road, and I think he knew what he was talking about. Probably most of you are familiar with the A361, and you realise how very little opportunity there is to do any safe overtaking on that road. I was a bit disturbed that there were mistakes in the county's transport plan. They suggested that there's a general 60 mile per hour speed limit on the A361. This is incorrect, it's 50. They have threatened 60 to 36 per day HGV movements, or between 7 and 4 per hour. I believe there was another mistake in the transport plan, but I'm not going to bore you with it now because you will have read the very comprehensive report. I would just say local ward members have a long-term knowledge of the local road network, and we view this proposal with deep concern. We believe our transport links are already becoming inadequate for the expanding villages of Byfield and Woodford Hulse, and this proposal will make matters far worse. And I would also complain that the villages of Preston Capes and Woodford have no opportunity were not asked to take part in this consultation, which clearly affects them, would affect them if it actually came to pass. So I trust the committee will support Officer's report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin. Councillor Batchelor.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, for once I agree with County Council Highways. They're dead on. The road network is you just can't sustain that many lorries over a period of time. The bottom of Boddington Road, where 5 ways is difficult to negotiate with any sort of lorry. But you know what goes on now. I mean, you've seen the pictures of the nice tidy site that it is at the moment. I mean, the unfortunate thing is that the Old Prisoner War Camp could sustain a waste transfer facility if there was a road network available to take the lorries, and if the upgrading of the Twistle and the Boddington Road going towards the reservoir was done by the wind turbine man that was put up a few years ago, then we might be in a different position. But as it is, we're not. The highways object to it strongly. The villages all around object to it strongly, and I think that I'm quite happy to agree officers' advice, with the exception of adding strongly object to the recommendation. What it says in the summary is dead on. Nothing more to say, Chairman, and I'll make that proposal that we do that.
From the Chair, I'm going to second that because I support the word strongly going in there as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can't believe when this gets to county that there'll be a recommendation for approval. But should there be, I would ask that as many local people go and spend that 3 minutes as possible there. Because I know the chairman of the committee is a county councillor for the next ward, the next division along. So he will be aware of it as well. So do go along. Right, anybody else wish to speak on it? Councillor Paul?
Yeah, Chairman, I mean, it's been said, but it's worth reiterating. This is a totally inappropriate road for HGVs. I use the road frequently until the pub burnt down, but however, it's totally inappropriate. The argument that it can use a second way in, cuts no ice whatsoever, and I think, including the word strongly object is more than adequate. As it was an old prisoner of war camp, perhaps we could have it as a heritage centre.
Non-designated heritage.
Non-designated. We have a proposal. The recommendation of the county council is in the report, but to include the word strongly object. All those in favour, please show. Yes, all in favour. Good. Thank you. Those will be the comments. Now the last one is here only for one reason, because it's Daventry District Council's application, okay?
+1.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application to vary the conditions for the extension to the Hillside building in Daventry. It's a DDC application, hence the need for it to come to the planning committee. They wish to carry out some external changes, relocate 4 tanks and alter condition 4 regarding the bundle capacity. As you can see by the photos, the extension is being carried out at the present moment. The Town Council support the proposal. Environmental Health have no objections to the rewording of condition 4. It is therefore considered the proposal will not have detrimental impact on the locality. Therefore, it's recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I should have said the application number is 1145 and it is in Hill. Right, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, local member. Totally, yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, totally agree with the report. One of our success stories, I hasten to add, being always willing to promote Daventry. An extremely success story, and I wish them all the success in the future. Happy to support officers' advice and propose it.
Thank you. You're seconding, Councillor Swift, are you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody wish to speak? If not, straightforward application. All those in support of that, please show. Unanimous. Thank you.
We were 4 minutes out, wasn't
Well, yes, we were asked at the chairman's briefing what time is in this meeting. We're finished. I did say 4 to 8. Anyway, thank you. That concludes the planning committee.